What if Darth Vader found Obi-Wan and Luke on Tatooine in A New Hope? That's what we're going to go over today. I always love diving into the original trilogy once in a while, so let's get right into it. Our story begins inside of the Tantive 4 as Darth Vader has just taken over the ship with his squad of stormtroopers. Not long ago, a group of rebel fighters infiltrated the Imperial base on Scarif, and they managed to steal the plans to the Empire's superweapon, the Death Star. Vader was tasked with retrieving these plans, and he nearly did so before the rebels jumped to hyperspace. Vader massacred an entire hallway of rebel soldiers, and now he had the Princess of Alderaan, refusing to give up the location of the plans. As Vader frustratedly sent his men to search every inch of the ship, he was informed that an escape pod was recently jettisoned down to the surface. of the sand planet below them. The stormtroopers said it was likely just a malfunction, but Vader knew the truth. The plans were aboard the escape pod. Of course they were. If Vader wanted the plans, he would have to return to the planet that he hates the most, Tatooine. He told the stormtroopers to ready his ship, as he will be going alone to retrieve these plans. Vader decided they were simply too important for him not to make his return to this dreaded planet. It wasn't necessarily that he was afraid to go down there, more so that just being on Tatooine filled him with so much rage. The man he once was, Anakin Skywalker, suffered and lost so much here. But now he must return. So Vader moved to his ship and descended down to Tatooine. He would do his duty to his master and retrieve these plans. Meanwhile, on the surface, events were playing out with some of the most important people in the galaxy. The escape pod landed, and out of it came R2-D2 and C-3PO, containing the plans to the Death Star. After some time moving throughout the sand dunes, the two of them came into the possession of Luke Skywalker and his family. And nearby, in a small hut, Ben Kenobi was feeling into the Force. He knew the time was close when Luke must be trained. Heck, he should have been trained at least 10 years ago. But Owen refused to let that happen. Kenobi couldn't really blame him. The Jedi had been massacred, wiped out of the galaxy by the Empire. So asking Owen for his son to become a Jedi was basically asking for him to die. Kenobi had spoken with Qui-Gon recently though, as speaking with his old master had become a very common occurrence these days. There was truly nothing else to do out here, and Kenobi could easily connect with him now. And the last time they spoke, Qui-Gon ended it with a rather eerie message, telling Obi-Wan that events with Luke are not going to go the way he thinks. Obi-Wan wondered what this meant, but suddenly he had to grab at his head. Someone was here. Someone he recognized easily. Vader? No, it couldn't be. After all these years, why was Vader here now? This was the safest planet from him, perhaps the only planet that he hated enough to never step foot on. Until now. Kenobi grabbed the lightsabers of Anakin and Obi-Wan, then began hurrying down to the Lars homestead. Far away from Tatooine, on the planet of Coruscant, Darth Sidus felt a strong shift in the Force. Something was happening, something bigger than anything over the last 2 decades as he ruled as Sith Emperor over the entire galaxy. Everything was going according to his plans. The Senate was finally being disbanded. He had his Death Star to rule over the people with fear and power. The only thing he truly had a problem with was his apprentice, Vader. Vader was powerful, but not powerful enough as he wanted him to be. There is no denying that he's powerful, but he's truly a husk of a man at this point. He will never truly be powerful enough to be the true Sith Lord of the galaxy. And today, as Sidious felt this shift in the Force, he meditated, searching for it. In this vision, he saw sand. He saw himself. But he was dead, and over him stood Vader and Kenobi. How poetic. Sidious called to the Imperial Star Destroyer above Tatooine, asking where Vader had gone. And the officer, Danger, answered, informing the Emperor that Vader is on the surface, searching for the Death Star plans. Sidious remembered his vision, and he knew the truth. Kenobi is there, and perhaps Tatooine can bring Anakin out of Vader. This is something Sidious simply cannot risk. He could find a new apprentice in time. So he ordered the officer to pinpoint Vader's location, fire directly onto it. The plans will be destroyed, Vader will be destroyed, but at least now the rebellion will lose hope of taking down the Death Star. And on the surface, Darth Vader angrily moved through the sand, tracking the path of what seemed to be an astromech, similar to the one he used to have. Vader sometimes thought of R2, understanding the droid was likely destroyed by now, but part of him hoped he would find R2 at the end of this trail. He continued on, all alone, surrounded by the memories of this planet, and Vader used the power of the dark side to block them. The wind surrounded him, and Vader swore he could hear the voices of his mother, Padme, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, all of them asking him what happened, asking him to come back. No, it was all fake. Tricks from this wretched planet. Vader picked up his pace now. He would find the plans, and he would get out of here. And inside of the Lars homestead, a meal was suddenly interrupted as old Ben Kenobi entered the room, telling them they have to leave immediately. Owen tried to protest, but he could quickly see the seriousness in Kenobi's eyes, and Owen simply asked, "Is it him?" Kenobi nodded slightly, and Owen nodded back. They did not get along, but in this moment, the moment they feared for years was coming. They worked together now, preparing a few things as Beru helped Luke. Once they were ready, Obi-Wan stepped out of the hut first and looked out to the near distance. He froze, then told the family to stay in the hut. In front of Kenobi now stood Vader, his cape billowing in the wind, and without speaking, he ignited a blood-red lightsaber. Kenobi slowly stepped out, the wind pushing his robes as well, and he ignited a blue saber. Vader looked to Kenobi's belt and saw another saber, Anakin's saber. He kept it through all these years. The tension in here could be cut with a knife. The two of them stared at each other now, no words being spoken. Both of them shocked beyond belief. Both of them knew they would not survive this battle. At least one of them was going to die. Master versus apprentice, Anakin versus Obi-Wan, Vader versus Kenobi. It was an intense stare between the two, and the battle was about to begin, when suddenly Vader felt something behind him. With a swift turn, Vader looked down and saw the astromech. With a few tiny beeps, R2 approached Vader, and the little droid reached out with an arm, and a hologram appeared. Somehow, R2 knew who Vader was, and he held out now a hologram of Anakin Skywalker. R2 had saved messages of Anakin deep inside of him, messages of the droid's best friend that R2 missed every day. Anakin had modified R2 to make him much more capable than the typical droid, and now Vader looked on at holograms of Anakin and R2 together. Vader was frozen in place, but as he stood here, looking at R2, Kenobi quietly moved in and cut through Vader's respirator. Vader fell to his knees with a scream, and looked on as Obi-Wan ushered out Owen, Beru, and a boy that he heard Kenobi call Luke. Vader wondered why Kenobi cared about this family so much. Why was he here? Unless the boy was someone special to Kenobi. The boy must have the Force. But many in the galaxy have the Force. Unless this boy is the child of Anakin Skywalker? No, that's impossible. But Luke was one of the names that he and Padme had discussed. And as Vader looked at him, the truth became clear. This was the son of Anakin. Suddenly, through the sky, a distant rumbling could be heard, and it was quickly becoming louder and louder. Vader, though damaged, looked to the sky and saw beams of light becoming clearer. A realization hit him. The Empire fired its cannons down on his location. The Empire was abandoning him. Vader looked to Kenobi, and then to his son, then back to the cannon fire, and Vader made a decision. His son would not die here. He would not die the same planet that his mother died. Vader would die here. So he used all of his power to stand, unleashing a huge force push to send the family flying away from the cannons. Vader continued his strong push, and the cannon slammed directly into the Lars home. Vader felt the heat hit him, then the explosions hit him, and he was violently thrown backwards, feeling his armor melt away, his skin burn again, and he went unconscious. On Coruscant, the Emperor received a hologram from the Imperial officer, and so he answered to hear the good news. The officer told Palpatine that Vader's location was fired upon, and as Imperial troopers went down to scour the area, there was no sign of Vader except for his broken mask. It was clear to the scout team that he was disintegrated, along with anyone else in the area. Palpatine ended the call, and felt into the Force. The officer was right. Darth Vader was gone. This was true. Vader was gone. But Anakin Skywalker had returned. Across the galaxy, On Mustafar, he woke up in a bacta tank. The yellow tint in his eyes was gone, replaced by the familiar blue of Anakin. And as Anakin woke up, he saw he was somehow back in his castle, with Obi-Wan standing outside of the tank. Obi-Wan knew of this castle. Of course, he never visited, but he knew of it. And Anakin asked him what happened. And Obi-Wan said that he pushed him and the Lars family to safety. The explosion should have killed Anakin, but as he was thrown backwards, he landed on R2, and the little droid flew him to safety. Anakin heard R2 chirp from nearby, and Anakin thanked him. R2 still had the Death Star plans, and so Anakin said that perhaps it's time that the two of them work together to take down the Death Star once and for all. Luke, Owen, and Beru were sent to Alderaan, while Obi-Wan went to Mustafar. They all flew with a scruffy man and his Wookiee companion, with promises of great wealth waiting for them on Alderaan. While there, Luke would meet Bail Organa, who would decide to bring the family to Yavin 4. The Death Star plans were recently transmitted there by Obi-Wan from Mustafar, which was strange, but Bail was going to meet with the rest of the Alliance on Yavin now. They all traveled together, and on Yavin, Luke and his family met with the growing rebellion, who informed them of the plans to take down the Death Star. But unfortunately for them, the plans would have to be put into motion much quicker than expected, as the Death Star just came out of hyperspace, above the rebel planets. On the Death Star, Princess Leia had resisted all forms of torture. There was no way she would be giving up the location of the rebel base, at least until the Emperor of the Galaxy walked into the prison cell. He simply said he has lost his patience, and then reached his arm out, probing Leia's mind, searching for the location of the rebel base. Within minutes, he had it. Yavin 4. Sidious hated doing his own dirty work, but sometimes things were just that important, especially with Vader gone. And originally he planned to kill Leia, but upon probing her mind, he felt a strong connection to the Force. And she had a darkness inside of her, so he let her live. Perhaps later, she could be his new apprentice. As the Death Star emerged from hyperspace, a rather large squadron of X-Wings took off from Yavin and flew up towards the Death Star. Palpatine found this resistance to be rather amusing, and so he ordered all TIE fighters to deploy and take them on. And so the TIE fighters began to depart from the hangar bay, but as they did, they suddenly were all hit from firepower from behind them. The Star Destroyer hangar began to explode as the two specialized TIE fighters emerged from hyperspace and fired missiles into the hangar bay, destroying all of the Imperial ships before they could truly take off. Inside one of the specialized fighters, Anakin spoke to R2 saying, "We got them, R2," still in his suit, but he had joy that he hadn't felt in decades. He has a son and daughter. Kenobi recently informed him that his daughter, Leia, is imprisoned aboard the Death Star. So together now, Vader and Kenobi entered the largely destroyed hangar, getting out of their ships. Years ago, the two of them would have flipped out of their sliding ships and taken down anyone in their way, but they were not exactly in their primes any longer, so they climbed out of their ships and moved along. Skywalker and Kenobi moved through the Death Star, cutting down any Imperial personnel that dared get in their way, moving along to the prison cells. On the bridge, Palpatine asked the officers where the TIE fighters were, as they were not emerging into the fight, and Palpatine was informed that the hangar bay was just destroyed. TIE reinforcements would not be coming. Palpatine was beginning to panic, but he told Tarkin and the rest of the officers to blow up Yavin 4, then take the Death Star into hyperspace above Coruscant. He was going to go retrieve the prisoner and leave in his personal shuttle. And so on one side, Skywalker, still in the repaired suit of Vader, and Kenobi quickly moved to find Leia, while Palpatine did the same on the other side. The Death Star was beginning to shake as X-Wings poured firepower onto it. The only Imperial defenses were the turrets, scattered along the outside of the Death Star, and they were keeping the X-Wings at bay, for now. And in the halls of the prison cells, Skywalker and Kenobi entered one side, while the Emperor entered in the other, now seeing each other for the first time. Palpatine could only laugh. Of course Vader lived. Skywalker lived. And today he would die next to Kenobi. Ben Kenobi, his weathered robe flowing gently with each step, stood alongside the reformed Vader, their lightsabers igniting in unison. Anakin was now using his old blue saber. It just was natural. And the two former adversaries shared a determined gaze, acknowledging the gravity of the task before them. Darth Sidus, draped in dark robes, sneered at the sight of his former apprentice standing against him. The air crackled with tension as the trio locked eyes, the force swirling around them as the battle station shook. The first strike came from Sidious, a flurry of lightning-fast blasts coming out of his hands. Kenobi and Vader seamlessly countered each attack with synchronized moves of blue blades. The clash of lightsabers against lightning reverberated through the halls, a testament to the intensity of this battle. Kenobi's defensive mastery complemented Anakin's raw strength, creating a formidable duo. And as Sidious launched a barrage of Force lightning, the two Jedi deflected the energy back towards the Emperor, forcing him to retreat momentarily. Vader engaged Sidious one-on-one, the redeemed Sith Lord fighting with a conviction to make amends for his past sins, each strike deliberate, every movement calculated. But he just couldn't strike down Sidious, as he moved like a shadow, trying to kill Vader. Kenobi, meanwhile, expertly parried incoming strikes from Sidious's assault. The two of them coordinated their efforts, exploiting weaknesses in Sidious's defenses, but it was no use. Sidious had them, and in a vulnerable moment, both were engulfed by lightning. Sidious laughed now, blasting them both with his extreme power. And outside the Death Star, Luke locked on to the exhaust port. He fired away, but his torpedo just missed, instead sending another giant shake throughout the battle station. Luke was frustrated with his miss, but he didn't know what he actually just did. The torpedo blast caused Palpatine to be slammed against the wall, falling to the ground in a heap. Anakin and Obi-Wan did not waste a moment, getting up quickly, stabbing Sidious together. Anakin made sure to kill him quickly enough so he could not transfer his essence. Luke saved them without ever knowing it. Together now, Obi-Wan and Anakin would get to Leia and guide her back to the hangar. The only ship still intact was the Emperor's shuttle, and so they got into it, flying out of here as Obi-Wan connected with Luke through the Force, guiding him to the exhaust port, telling him to use the Force. Luke listened, firing the shot perfectly. As the Emperor's shuttle left the hangar, the Death Star exploded into trillions of pieces, just before it could fire upon the Rebel base. 1 year later, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker stood together, training Luke and Leia in the ways of the Force. They were masters together, a year after the dismantling of the Empire. After the Death Star was destroyed, the Rebellion was able to take Coruscant and begin reforming a new republic, thanks in large part to Bail Organa and Leia. Luke stayed with the Rebel fighters, helping them to take down the Empire. Obi-Wan and Vader went off on a journey alone, as the two of them came to terms with everything that happened. Obi-Wan had a great trouble forgiving Anakin, but in time, he would, and eventually they would even visit Yoda, as he died once and for all, leaving the Jedi in the hands of Kenobi and Skywalker. And now the two of them were training Luke and Leia, knowing that it would not be long until they die as well, passing the Force to this new generation, led by the Skywalker twins. And folks, that is our story for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Once again, as I usually say with these stories, maybe this isn't the most likely outcome, but it was the one that I had the most fun. It was the one I felt had the most, story to it. I always love the idea of R2 kind of interacting with Anakin, with Vader. In the Clone Wars, we really see how much Anakin and R2, love each other. So I love kind of tying that back. And I wanted to do something where Anakin and Obi-Wan end up training the twins together. I don't know if I've really seen that before. It usually ends up with one or both of them dying, and I wanted to kind of do, the two of them reuniting. But let me know what you thought. There are many ways this could go. We could have just had Vader massacre everyone on Tatooine, but I didn't want to go that route. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.